Welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast about the movies and characters that make us feel seen. Today, my co-host just happens to be a friend of mine, Remy Solomon. She's a writer with a lot of TV experience, though, as we'll get into, most of her work has had to stay under wraps for the time being. She's also got a major presence on TikTok, where she's known for sharing her, quote, impeccable taste in everything with the world. It's been a few months since we recorded this one, and I'm so excited to finally bring you this conversation with my friend Remy about one of cinema's great leading ladies, Emma Stone as Olive Pendergast in Easy A. So, Remy Solomon, how does that feel as, do we feel like we've informed the audience for, a good table setting with you, or what else do they need to know about you before we get going?
I think that's perfect. No, I think the truth of my career is that nobody really knows what's going on, but I am able to pay for my apartment, and that's what matters. Anything else I can tell you about me? I spent 3 years developing a show with Apple, for which I ran 2 development mini rooms. That has sort of been the biggest thrust of my career at this point. But yeah, we stay employed, we stay making television in spite of all the odds.
Is as much of your career invisible and secretive as you expected coming into this line of work? Because I feel like it's not a secret thing about it, but it does feel like there has to be some sort of jarring quality of when you get here and you're like, wow, I can't talk about, I've been putting years of my life into something and I can only talk about it in swishes and glances.
Yeah, I mean, it's very strange, I would say, especially the Apple show. I got that virtually right out of college because I am extremely lucky and I was in the right place at the right time. But it means that I've spent all of my 20s up until this point basically unable to talk about my career until about a month ago.
Wow.
No, I did not anticipate that. And I think the creation of my social media presence was really in response to the secrecy of my actual work life. I want to be able to talk about something that I'm interested in because most of this either has not seen the light of day or may never. So I want to talk to people about something and give my thoughts on certain things. So yeah, it was kind of an unexpected offspring of that.
I will say that the reason I started podcasting is those dark lockdown days when it was I'd been furloughed off of Vulture and it was I'm used to having my name out there. I'm used to getting published. I'm used to talking about things in the public forum with people and them weighing in on things I've said and us being in conversation about that. So it was I want to goddamn publish something. I want to have something out there that I have made that I am responsible for. So I think I understand what you are saying with that.
Yeah, I have both the Gen Z urge to be seen, as is appropriate for the title of this podcast. And I have the Leo urge to be watched, which I'm trying to fight with everything in my body. But
are you winning that? Are you really wanting to win that battle? Or are you not really?
I am. Well, I am wanting to win that battle because I think at their best, showrunners are creators. They're not. Let me back up. Many showrunners are both actors and writers and occasionally directors. But for people who don't go down that path, I will never be an actor. I've already played the priest in Hamlet very unsuccessfully. So it is not for me. But for people who are just sort of orchestrating the show, if you will, I think it's best that your personality doesn't necessarily overshadow the product. So much of television is about what people bring to it and allowing them to have their own you could say this of any art form, but allowing them to have their own interpretations. And I think if too much of me is out there, then it becomes about me and not about the art. So yeah, I'm kind of constantly wrestling that and failing to come to terms with it.
I feel like this does actually slide into the primary character in the movie today. So in our transition point, who have you brought for us to discuss today?
Jordan, I'm so excited to tell you that after really, really debating with myself what I wanted to bring, I actually went back to my first choice, which was Olive in Easy A.
I used to be anonymous, invisible to the opposite sex. If Google Earth were a guy, He couldn't find me if I was dressed up as a 10-story building. Pretty cutting-edge stuff, huh? A high school girl feeling anonymous. Who am I? What does it all mean? Why am I here? Blah. But don't worry, this isn't one of those tales. Though it sure started out that way. And then it changed pretty quickly when I started lying about some very personal things. So, let the record show that I, Olive Pendergast, being of sound mind and, hello, average breast size, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Starting now.
I think to understand the background of this, I should tell you that there were about 13 movies I had saved on my iTunes, like when you could I guess you could still can, but like I downloaded 13 movies on my iTunes and I watched them every day on the bus to and from school. So I have seen this movie, no joke, 30 times. But then I was like, I could have picked any of these other ones. House Bunny, 27 Dresses, like these movies that I've seen so many times that it's like I hear their voices in my head. I was recently sleeping over at a friend's house and she put on Easy A and I fell asleep because I'm tired all the time. I fell asleep. She said, you woke up in the middle of a scene and laughed right on cue. Like there's no way you heard the line. Your body was just programmed to wake up and laugh.
Yeah. Your body knew your body knew it couldn't miss it. It couldn't not engage with that key part.
100%, yeah.
So it was immediate. Like you said, you were watching this on the bus to school. So when you watched this for the first time, when you were perhaps a teenager, you were like, this movie is it.
Yeah, I think it was such a perfect kind of confluence of like a really engaging, really funny story, but also exactly the kind of woman I both was, well, the tween I was and the woman I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's really born out of the voice that I sort of most often try to emulate in my writing, which is like the dishy mid 2000s women's magazine voice.
I was so glad you brought up the dishy because I have it here. You once told me that like your sort of handle as a writer was dishy insider gossip. And so I'm really glad that you have thrown us into that as well.
Yeah, it's so funny. That only ends up being about half of the work I actually make. But that is like my favorite stuff to read. It's, I think, where I am at the best in my writing is when I'm talking to the girls. When it's like, oh, did you hear what she did? And I try and bring everything out of the impulse of, oh my God, you're not going to believe this. And that's really what this movie is about. Gossip. And like the power of a story to both change your life and to totally overtake your life.
When you were in high school, were you wanting to participate in that sort of like sewing circle, gossipy, or were you on the outside of looking in of that, being like, I wish I could participate in that? Like, how did that play a role in your life as an actual kid?
Trying to decide how much I should say on this podcast. No, it's fine.
You don't have to use names. You don't have to use specifics.
No, this is incriminating to nobody but myself.
Got it.
I was always sort of on the outside of many circles. I was a floater, if you will.
I was too. I get that. I could kind of drop in anywhere.
I never felt bullied. I never felt excluded, but I was never part of an in-group. But what I wanted was to know everything that was going on at all times. So in 7th grade, in one of my darker moments, I created like the gossip mill, and I would have girls at my all-girls school come to me with information, and I would trade them back other information. I was running basically a silly band's dealership of gossip for like a month.
There was like actual commerce around this. Like there was bartering.
Yes, it was in retrospect insane. But it was insane. Like, I think what was lost on me and what is lost on Olive at times in the movie is that like there were real people's lives involved. And to me, it was like the Click series that I loved, or it was like the Gallagher Girls. Like these are stories. They don't have like a deeper impact. And I think growing up was realizing stories both about real people and stories about non-real people have impact that you can't anticipate. So it's made me very conscious of like, what am I putting out in the world? Is it good? Is it not?
Which brings us to part 2. The accelerated velocity of terminological inexactitude, which is really just my obnoxious way of saying that lies travel fast. And boy, did my terminological inexactitude accelerate with velocity.
Did you hear about Olive? Olive lost her virginity.
Maybe next time a certain somebody will be a little more careful what she says in the water closet.
Yeah, about that. That's actually not what you think. Can I, talk to you alone for a second? What you heard in the bathroom the other day wasn't true at all. It's actually a funny story.
Olive. That's your name, right?
Yeah, and you're Marianne. We've had 9 classes together since kindergarten. 10, if you count Religion of Other Cultures, which you didn't because you called it science fiction and refused to go.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not the one that you have to answer to for your depraved behavior. There's a higher power that will judge you for your indecency.
Tom Cruise.
I hope for your sake that God has a sense of humor.
Oh, I have 17 years worth of anecdotal proof he does.
You've also just described the plot of the movie Gossip, starring Kate Hudson, Joshua Jackson, James Marsden, Lena Headey.
I've never seen this.
From like 1998. Yeah, the beginning of the movie is like they're in like a media studies class. Their media studies teacher's like Eric Bogosian. And they decide, like this shitty trio, and whoever, I always forget his name, but he's Daryl on Walking Dead. Like him, Lena Headey, and James Marsden are a trio. And James Marsden, the rich one, he kind of like keeps them. And they are bratty. And they decide they're going to start a rumor to see how long it takes for that rumor to get back to them and what it will sound like by the time it reaches them again. So what starts as like, did you see like Joshua Jackson kiss Kate Hudson at the party because they're together? And by the time it gets back to them at like the end of the day, it's like people are talking about rape. And suddenly, then you launch into the rest of the movie, which is like Lena Headey being like, we have a responsibility to the fact that we created this rumor. And then like her friends being like, but what if there is truth to the rumor? We weren't there. You said you didn't really see it. So it's a movie about the life of a rumor and the implications of the rumor and the surprising truths of a rumor that can possibly have legs. So there's one for you.
That is fascinating, and I will be watching that. That's what so many celebrities do, right? Like they'll start a rumor to see who in their camp is telling the information to like the tabloids. And they'll give each person different information. I mean, this is I don't think this is revealing anything. Like people have done this since the dawn of Hollywood.
Sure, but I think people don't really think about it happening, like, because it does sound so cinematic that it's like, oh yeah, that thing that people do. And then it's like, wait, people like actually do that?
They do, as it turns out. But you know, it makes sense. I think, especially in this day and age, like stories have more power than ever. There's so much more potential for virality. People are, especially those in the public eye, are like so much more closely scrutinized. So I see that they have to have sort of a royal family level of control over their image.
I'm wondering what, like, the different, because I feel like that's always sort of been like a harsh lesson of like when you're a kid of like realizing the implications of the things you say, like that like things actually hurt. But you're younger than me. And like I'm my late 30s. And so like there was a different element, I would imagine, of social media when you were in your tweens and teens. So like you talked about, like that notion of that possibility of virality, plus the learning hard lessons in your youth of like the weight of your words and the impacts that they can have. Like you grew up, you and like subsequent generations have grown up. The hard lessons are a lot louder than I think they were for people before you. And that's a really tricky thing to have to navigate as a child. And like that's where, like you said, that's what we're watching in Easy A. Like that's all of having to navigate at like a school level and like a local news level practically. Her virginity and how she markets herself and suddenly turning into like the scarlet letter wearer on her little perfect Ojai campus.
What's going on?
I'm accessorizing.
Really?
Uh-huh.
I think you're taking your reading assignment a little bit too seriously.
Well, I was really hoping to get an A. Get it?
Hee ha ha.
Yeah.
I'm hearing some rumors.
Well, those are true. I am considering becoming an existentialist.
You know what I'm talking about.
Jeez. When did teachers become privy to idle adolescent gossip?
That would be when everyone is putting everything up on Facebook. I don't know what your generation's fascination is with documenting your every thought, but I can assure you they're not all diamonds.
Yeah, I was around. I was very young at the time, but I was around for the dawn of Forum Spring. Did this ever cross your desk?
I have only heard of Form Spring.
I'm so relieved that that was not a part of your life. But yeah, you would set up an account, like have a profile in your name, and people would submit things anonymously to you.
Oh.
And it was hell. It was evil. It was so bad. But this was also like in the era of like kind of Gossip Girl.
I think the thing that I would equate that to would be Post Secret. That was sort of, that I didn't participate in Post Secret, but where you could, like, it was a forum where you could just send in anonymized things to just be published. And they weren't so specific. They weren't like sending it to people. It was just like, I just need to say this secret thing. So you'd send it to Post Secret, and Post Secret would put your information out there, but anonymized, but you could, like, get it off your chest.
I think that's still happening in a lot of ways. There's like a lot of clips that go viral from various podcasts of people reading secrets. Like so many podcasts have like
Yes.
a secrets forum. And I'm always wondering like, who's the reader that loves this podcast so much that they've decided that this is the secret bucket they're going to donate it to? But yeah, no, I think the power of a story in an enclosed environment and the way it can rapidly shift and become too big for you, it has always been of interest to me. And in Olive's case, I love that it intersects with sexuality.
That was gonna be my next set of questions. Yes.
We have to talk about it because so much of it like really related to my experience of telling these stories again, like all girls school. I never saw a guy. I was just making stuff up, like about myself mostly in those cases.
Yeah.
But you would tell a story because you want to have sort of a weight in the community. You want to come from a position of authority.
Yeah.
You want to be able to say things that other people aren't saying. I mean, that's not necessarily where Olive is coming from in the movie. I think she's coming from a place of trying to be kind and then trying to be known. And those are both feelings I've experienced. I liked the winking casualness she brought to sexuality. Like when they're, this is where they're jumping on the bed and she punches him in the stomach.
What are you talking about? Yeah! Do you smell that? Do you smell that?
Ew, 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 ew.
Oh, did he just say it smelled? Isn't it supposed to smell?
I don't know, but if it does, you're not supposed to comment on it.
It doesn't really smell that bad.
Oh, yeah! You're a stud! Don't stop!
Don't stop! Too much fun!
You ready for the grand finale?
Yeah, what? Oh!
Oh, yeah!
Oh my God.
Go forth, my son. You're a man now.
Thank you. Seriously. Thanks.
So funny and silly. And I'm like, for as much as I related to these stories about like telling tales out of school, I always brought a kind of seriousness to it. I think like a gravity of this was a very important thing. And she handled it so like sex.
Yeah. It's amazing the constellation of things that are so great in this movie. Best cinematic parents of all time in Stanley Tucci and Patricia Clarkson.
Guys, I just want you to know that if you hear around town that I have chlamydia, that is totally false.
Olive, do we need to have the talk again?
No, it's just a thing that's going around.
Nothing you're saying is making me feel any better.
Not to mention how you've been dressing the last few days. No judgment, but you kind of look like a stripper.
Mom!
A high-end stripper. For governors or athletes, but stripper nonetheless.
Oh my God, I'm just trying to mix it up a little.
One of the great high school mean girl characters of all time in Amanda Bynes' extremely Christian girl.
Seems as if someone's on a downward spiral.
Seems as if someone's practicing the mundane activities she'll be saddled with the rest of her pathetic life.
I just hope for your sake you at least had the good sense to use protection.
Why? Your parents didn't.
You're going to hell.
Just as long as you won't be there.
I can assure you, I won't.
The epitome of the 2000s in Best Friendship, Ali Michalka playing her best friend, amazingly named Rhiannon, who she has a falling out with.
You know Rhiannon. She's, perpetually angry. She curses like a Somali sailor. Yep. So on.
Bet, what's bet?
Okay.
What's bet?
Okay.
What bet is? Hello, what's bet? What is bet?
Right.
Bet. What is bet? Bedazzling personality, beautiful, beautiful soul.
Big tits.
That's my identifier.
Yes!
Like, as the like burgeoning creator that you would be, talk to me about like the parts of this movie as a movie too that perhaps have stayed with you over time. And like you said, you like dishy insider gossip, and you debated other coming of age movies to talk about with this one. Like, what is it about this movie that helps stand the test and keeps you like waking up from a dead sleep to laugh strategically at like your favorite parts?
Yes, I think this connects to one of the other movies that I was like, oh, I gotta talk about this. And I said, no, this is not the one that made me feel seen, but it is the one that made me feel emotionally distraught. And that is movie 13 by Catherine Hardwicke, which I talk about all the time. I have written Catherine Hardwicke a fan letter, which I have never sent to her because it is genuinely too embarrassing. It is the only fan letter I've ever written in my life. And now I'm going to sidebar on 13 because I have to talk about this movie.
Listen, having been honored enough to have interviewed her on the show, I think she might be the perfect person to send a fan letter to. Just gonna say that.
I would say I have received that information. I have gotten the green flag to send it to like an assistant of an assistant. And I can't do it. So I will say from a safe and careful distance. I'm
gonna to all the boys I've loved before you and find this in a shoebox, and I'm gonna send it to Catherine Hardwicke.
You absolutely can't. I'm too embarrassed. But what I loved about 13 as a kid is that I was like, this is a movie about these two girls and how hard it is to be a teenager and how much everything sucks and how cool it would be to just feel nothing. And then I watched it again maybe 2 years ago, and I was like, oh, this is a movie about a mother trying to find her daughter where she's at. And I was like,
yeah.
Oh, like I grew up.
That is, wow, that is such a passage of time moment. Wow.
But it's such a gift to have a piece of media that you get to grow up through.
Yeah.
I think that's quite rare. But the reason this connects back to the movie we're actually talking about, EZA, is that every female relationship in it does not go where you expect it to go. They kind of give you these characters, especially in EZA, that you're supposed to recognize. The good Christian girl, the best friend, the like, chill mom, or the school therapist. And they take each one of them, and where their arc starts is like what you've been taught to expect of a late 90s, early 2000s comedy for a female character. And then by the end, you're like, what did I just watch? Where, like, every one of them kind of goes on a productive journey. And I think that's still like vanishingly rare and felt like somebody always kind of gets short shrift, especially in like a comedy movie that's not treated as like character driven, but this really is.
Well, and something I want to talk to you about was like we have talked recently about like a hunger in your experience as a writer for salaciousness that can, even to you, someone who enjoys salaciousness, feel like, what is this even for besides just like giving you something to, clutch your pearls about? And I would say one of perhaps earliest, biggest TikToks was your best like favorite horny movies. Like these are movies that are different kinds of horny. I don't know if that video is still up. I don't know if you were like, I have to take it down. It's brought in too much attention sort of situation. But then like when we started talking about Olive and Easy A2, like you talked about it as like the sexual narrative, like liberation, non-liberation aspect of it. Like this is a very chaste movie about a girl branded with a scarlet letter. And I wanted to talk to you about its sort of cleverness in the way that it is a non-sex sex comedy. And how it, like you said, no characters are given kind of short shrift in this, and the sort of vanishingly rare aspect of everybody getting to have an arc in a movie. So I wanted to talk to you about, like, being a clever sex comedy by way of kind of not including sex at all, or like the comedic clownish performance of a sex scene. Tell me about that as somebody who is called upon to write things that are very perhaps over the top sexual at times.
Yeah, to back up, and now I'm realizing maybe this should have been in my intro because it's sort of the intro in most of my general meetings still, that I used to be a romance novel ghostwriter. I wrote 13 romance novels. I had never read a romance novel before writing one. I was literally just guessing. But in my time in the romance world, I learned a lot about the expectations for romance, a lot about the subculture of romance. And then just as I was sort of leaving it, Book Talk changed everything. It was still, I was told that it was for 50 to 64-year-old women, by and large.
Oh, okay.
Is what they said to assume the audience base was. But all that to say, half the meetings I take are about people who want to make something really, really sexy and drip down wet. And I find myself often saying there is a difference between what makes a book sexy, what makes a TV show sexy. To me, the sexiest TV shows, True Blood, obviously the sexiest TV show ever made.
Amazing.
It is about both integrating sex up front, but giving a long, slow, or like that is what TV does that no other medium can do. And I think that's why, without saying any titles at all, I think that is why we have sort of struggled in this current iteration of romance media to find that really, really hits. Like we can put as much sex as we want on TV, especially now that it's streamers in addition to networks. The rules are kind of gone. But we're so worried about gratifying an audience quickly that we're not really keeping them hooked. Circling back to your actual question.
Sure.
What I think makes a sex comedy sexy without actually having any sex in it is, this is an amazing question. And I think if I could figure this out, maybe I'd sell a movie. But no, I think I don't think it's really sexy. Like, it's not really a movie I watch for horniness. It's a movie I watch to understand my own relationship to sexuality, which is not like that. That's more of like an academic conversation within myself rather than, something I'm watching for like a long, slow burn. Like it's Moonlight or whatever.
Yeah. It's time for a break, but we will be right back with more from Remy. And then I will have one quick thing before I go about a cinematically completely different experience than Easy A, and that is Jeremy Saulnier's new excellent movie, Rebel Ridge. So stick around for that.
One thing we all have in common, we all have a mind.
It makes me so scared because I'm like, when is the bad thing going to happen?
And minds can be kind of unpredictable and eccentric.
Everybody wants to hear that they're not alone. Everybody wants to hear that someone else has those same thoughts.
Depeche Mode with John Moe is about how interesting minds intersect with the lives and work of the people who have them. Comedians, authors, experts, all sorts of folks trying to make sense of their world.
It's not admitting something bad if you say, this is scary.
Depeche Mode with John Moe, every Monday at MaximumFun.org or wherever you get podcasts.
Soundheap with John Luke Roberts is a real podcast made up of fake podcasts. Like, if you had a cupboard in your lower back, what would you keep in it?
So I'm going to say mugs.
A little yogurt and a spoon.
A small handkerchief that was given to me by my grandmother on her deathbed.
Maybe some spare honey.
I'd keep batteries in it. I'd pretend to be a toy. If I had a cupboard in my lower back, I'd probably fill it with spines.
If you had a cupboard in your lower back, what would you keep in it? Doesn't exist. We made it up for Sound Heap with John Luke Roberts, an award-winning comedy podcast from Maximum Fun, made up of hundreds of stupid podcasts. Listen and subscribe to Sound Heap with John Luke Roberts now.
I'm fascinated by the conceit of, just given my life and my history as a pan-romantic gray asexual individual, like you being like, I started writing romance novels. I had never read them. I was not a part of this scene. Like, I was not immersed in it. And we're doing bonus content on the show for subscribers where we're going to talk about like erotic thrillers. And I would love to have you back for an episode. We're going to have people like deep dive on like kind of like the craziest erotic thrillers that they have enjoyed. And it's an accidentally sort of interesting conceit, in my opinion, to approach talking about erotic thrillers from a person who is like sexually disconnected from like their body in the physical marketplace, and like sex is a thing people have and seek out kind of thing. So I think there's a reason why you were really good at it. Well, you're good at what you do, but like I think there's a reason behind your success of that, it coming from a sort of surprising perspective, because when you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, you can do anything.
Yes. Yeah. There are not as many rules. Like, you're kind of moving off of instinct, which is funny in such a, and I don't say this in a derogatory way, but a genuinely formulaic marketplace. Like, yeah, it is literally formulaic because readers have a certain set of expectations. So I think,
hey, as you know, I'm a great fan of one of the most formulaic of genres, which is horror, and innovation within formula is an incredible art form.
Yes. Again, like that's what EZA does really well. Like it is so much a formula of its time, and then it turns every piece of it on its head. I think part of why we're seeing romance not struggle right now, but really find new footing is that the rules of the game have changed for the better, and it's made us have to reassess what is the formula that we can then break. Like, it's not Pride and Prejudice anymore. Like, we're in a different space. But like the reason that book is successful is that we all sort of understand the rules of the time, and we understand how like shocking it is that Mr. Wickham runs away with her. Like, it's the reason Regency is so successful is like there are so many rules, and like
there
now
are so many rules.
Yeah. I mean, if I could go off on a little tangent, like,
please,
watching Love is Blind tells me that I do not understand the rules of dating anymore. Like, I am watching this show as though I have visited an alien planet, and I'm like,
same, honestly.
Are these the rules of date? Like, how can I write about this if I have so little understanding of these things you hold to be self-evident? At every turn I'm baffled, and yet there are scenes in this season that are genuinely HBO, Emmy, like.
Something I wanted to get to too, with the aspect of like, we talked about this a bit with Olive, and you know, the sort of delight she takes at certain turns before it kind of gets to be a little bit too much of like, everybody knows her, she's dressing in like a sexy way at school, like as her mom points out, like you like a stripper, like a high-end stripper for governors and athletes, but like still, like let's talk about this style change. And you having the TikTok, and I feel like there's inevitably, even if it's only like subtle gradations of it, like we assume a kind of persona when we, like, I would like to think that like Jordan Crucial, A Host of Feelings Seen is exactly what you get when you meet me in person, and like I'm pretty sure it is, but at the same time too, like I'll be sitting in a room with Moa, who I'm married to, and I'll be like, do you mind if I record pickups for the podcast? And the first time I did it, she was like, that was the most animated I have ever heard you sound. And you sound animated all of the time. Like, you jazz up, like you have to dial the energy. This is a performance. It's entertainment. And so I wanted to talk to you about like your awareness as a child watching this movie of that like persona creation versus who you are, and then like your relationship with that as an adult, where you have a career that is both a public thing but also filled with things you can't talk about, and you have a TikTok where you are yourself with your taste, but also I would imagine doing like a social media-ized version of yourself that best suits the format of say TikTok. Like, how has your consideration of person and persona sort of evolved over the time?
Oh, Jordan, I think about this every day.
I think it's a great topic.
I will attest to listeners of this podcast. You are exactly as you are on and off the pod. Like, you are
all right.
Yourself. Most of my TikTok is me speaking in almost monotone. Which is notable to anybody who knows me in real life because my voice goes woo woo, like up and down. We're all over the place. But that was really a product of the medium. And again, my
absolutely
inability to act. I have to record multiple takes of most of the videos I shoot. And I got tired of trying to match the same level of enthusiasm or like match cuts. And it was just easier if I spoke in monotone.
Totally.
But also, I have found the sort of exaggerated enthusiasm of the app to be very grating and to read to me as advertisements.
Sure, yeah.
Which most things are. I would like to point out, I have never had a brand deal. Like nothing I do. I was retroactively paid once, but nothing I do is sponsored, despite the accusations I get in my comment section.
Sure.
But it just started as something that was easier, and now it has become more of a branding choice. But yeah, I think about it. I think about it all the time. I think it's the most clear way to get my opinions across without offering a sort of intimacy.
Interesting.
What I don't want to do is imply that people know me from my social media presence. It is different. I started a Substack, like any good TikToker. I started a Substack, and that is much more me. It's much more personal because it's my writing, and I can't not be personal in my writing. But I'm very conscious in public spaces where people who don't necessarily want to watch you, but who are given videos of you, what they are going to think of you. Whereas, like, if it's a blog, somebody had to go looking for that. Like, that is not readily available. And I think that's, it's something I think about in a lot of media. Like, is somebody watching what I make voluntarily? Did they want this, or is it being thrust upon them?
So what's with your new look? Very horror couture.
Oh, haven't you heard? I'm the new school slut.
You know, I did hear something. I also heard he was twice your age.
Oh, no. He was a freshman in college.
I also heard he gave you crabs.
Ew. People suck.
Tell me about it.
He's not real.
What?
The guy I slept with. I made him up.
Wait, you started the rumor?
Indirectly, I guess, sort of. Or actually, no. No, not really. No, I didn't.
What, but you're perpetuating it? That's really messed up.
Excuse me?
Well, you're not even a real slut. You just want people to think you are. It's pathetic.
The way Olive deals with her own personal branding speaks to me. She sort of goes deeper and deeper into character, which I think in some ways I have done. And then she realizes that there are that parts of it are true to her, that there are things that feel good, that feel right. And there are parts of it that are cumbersome. Like, forget even like life ruining or something, like just annoying. Like, I am annoyed by people constantly saying, why do you talk like that? Like, what do you mean? Like, because I got to get through the video. I don't know. What do you want me to say?
Well, and in your experience, like we've talked about story, and like this is the age of kind of story over information. And I think an interesting thing about Easy A is that the way people buy into this idea of Olive, this is absolutely what happens in high school. Like, you know, like there's the whole South Park episode about how the character Bebe gets boobs and suddenly she's the coolest girl in school. And all the boys can't figure out why Bebe is so cool and interesting. Like, she's just so cool. And it's because Bebe has boobs. And like, people can know you your whole life. They can go to school with you your whole life. But if they like the story and they want to latch onto the story that they hear about you that runs contrary to everything they've ever known about you, they'll still latch onto that story pretty quickly a lot of the time. And we see that playing out in real life all the time in so many ways now, on so many scales. Do you find that as a content creator, as a screenwriter, do people want authenticity? Because we hear so much about authenticity. It's so real. She's just so authentic. It's so sincere. Do people want authenticity, or do they just want a good story? Do they just want a good performance?
I mean, in my humble opinion, I think I say this also in nearly every meeting I go to. I find myself constantly explaining that my generation has the attention span of a rat. And what we need isn't necessarily like raw and unvarnished. Like we've heard, I mean, I think not I guess it is the previous generation, but 2015 or so, 2016, was really the peak of BuzzFeed authenticity, born out of the thought catalog movement. And it was very, the openness, the honesty was very appreciated. And I think did a lot of good. But I think we've heard a lot of it now. I think we've experienced the honesty, and we, especially on the creator end, have realized how much of a personal sacrifice it is to be that honest. I mean, again, you were working as a journalist in that era. I'm probably preaching to the choir, but you were asked to bring so much of yourself to projects.
And it was the age of the personal essay.
It was the age of the personal essay, and you got very little in return relative. You just got clicks for your bosses. I don't want to make an app money because I don't have my creator beta fund or whatever it's called turned on. I'm not making shit from this. Why would I give away my story? So I think, and hey, maybe people do want authenticity, but I would argue that Risa Tisa going viral is not because she was so frank and open. I mean, yes, but it's because she told a great story. I watched all 50 parts. As much as I say my generation has no attention span, we have an attention span for stories. We just expect to be entertained. And I would like to argue that this is why we've seen the rise of Suits among Gen Z. It's because procedurals are the most tightly executed story you can have. You have an act break every 10 minutes or so. It's always a cliffhanger. It is a contained story that is satisfying in the episode, but rewards you over the course of one season or several seasons. I hope that executives are understanding that that is why the show is successful in my group, and not because we all love the law so much. But I'm not sure if that message is resonating.
Talking in terms of the bookends of Emma Stone in non-sex sex comedy in Easy A, which is one of the great teen films of all time, and I think one of the great comedies of the 21st century. This movie is out goddamn standing. And then we fast forward us to 20 years later, our current moment, where we have two girl becomes woman, girl doll becomes woman stories nominated for Best Picture that are very different in Barbie and Poor Things, one of which stars Emma Stone. What do you appreciate about where we are in terms of that coming of age and maturation for women's stories, being heralded on the level of Best Picture now, versus what might you miss about what you saw in Easy A that you might still feel is vanishingly rare in terms of how you are fed as an audience member who enjoys this stream of content so much?
I'm going to reflect it because it's a thought-provoking question about the connections between both of these and the differences between them and something like Anatomy of a Fall. I find that you don't necessarily need a massive fantasy world to tell a woman's story. There is a little part of me, with all due respect to everybody involved, that thinks we had to go to a whole other universe to justify telling a story about a woman.
Yeah. No, I completely see what you mean.
It's not a read on the quality of the movies themselves.
No.
I just noticed that Olive was enough to be the center of her own story in a slightly over the top comedy, but something that is still plausible in the real world, much the way that like House Bunny is over the top, but it's still in our real world. And I think there's kind of a movement away from that that makes me a little sad. Like, I think it's also in rebellion. Oh my God, if I can go on another track entirely, I think there's some part of it that's in rebellion of like the authenticity thing we were talking about.
Yeah.
Of like, Euphoria got so big because it's supposed to be gritty and raw and real. And then we heard from teenagers like, hey, like that's actually not my real life. Or if it is, like, I'm going to this for like an escape. There's been such like a call for blue skies television. I think we're seeing like a departure from reality in movies. Like they've become, our reality has become quite painful. So we're looking for any form of an escape that's as far away from life as possible. I mean, that is kind of what Barbie is about, which is like, it's supposed to be a fantasy land. And then it turns out to be so deeply flawed, which is probably what Greta was really driving at. And she faced a lot of misinterpretation. I mean, oh God, heavy is the head that wears that amount of IP.
Well, okay, then I guess, like, what was the line then, Remy, do you know what the line was that you woke up programmed deeply in your soul to laugh at Easy A?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. No, but what's coming to mind is, I gotta fuck a fuck. I gotta. That is what's, God, that's what's coming to mind for me.
And here's how I really spent the weekend. Ugh! Worst song ever.
Oh, whoa. Do what you want, but you're never gonna break me. Six stones are never gonna shake me, yo. Oh, wow. I gotta
Underappreciated still as one of the great physical comedic turns of Emma Stone's entire career, Easy A. For the tributes, for the respect to all of Pendergast and Easy A, and the movie that made me think Oh Hi was the slice of heaven on earth that I was destined to live in and needed to exist in. Thank you, Remy, for coming on the show today. I'm so glad you manifested being on this podcast.
Jordan, thank you so much for having me. I am so glad to have snuck into your podcast. Now I'm going to slip right back out.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Remy Solomon. You can find her on TikTok at Remy_Solomon, and her newsletter, Immaculate Taste, is at RemySolomon.substack.com. And now that one quick thing before I go. Yeah, friends. If you know me at all, you are unsurprised to hear that I am very hyped up on Rebel Ridge. It is a Netflix original. It is directed by Jeremy Saulnier, famously of Blue Ruin, of Green Room, two great movies with colors for names. And this guy knows how to make a hard-hitting movie. He knows how to make a story about revenge. And you know what? If you guys are out there and you're like, God, I love the Reacher series, and I love large, military, specialized men characters who have a strong moral code that keeps them from being like a cosmically destructive force, because they could wipe out everybody around them if they chose to, but they don't. They choose peace over violence. Rebel Ridge is for you. Rebel Ridge is for us. It's for the people, because it also feels like a 90s crime thriller. That particular era of crime thriller that you know it, I know it. It just doesn't come around that much anymore. That, like, you know, Bruce Willis movies, Heat, so many things starring Wesley Snipes. It feels like that. And the star of it is Aaron Pierre, who is fantastic in the leading role. And it is about a man who is trying to get to his cousin, who has been incarcerated in a small southern town, and Louisiana, I believe, and literally along the way to helping him, he's like physically trying to get to his cousin to help him with bail money. He is pulled over by police. He has his the money he's carrying with him, a lot of it, seized by those police, and is then given just a heinous amount of runaround in getting the money back to help his family. And it becomes a cool, violent only when necessary, incendiary always for its observations about the broken nature of the policing system in this country, of there's definitely racism, and there are so many contributing plot elements on the antagonist side of this movie that just juice you up so big for like your rooting interest for Terry, our guy, and how Aaron Pierre carries off the role, just like locks you in with him. Anna Sophia Robb in a supporting capacity, doing a fantastic job, exactly what is asked of her in a note perfect performance, as you know, a little bit of the Robin too as Batman. And then Don Johnson is here being just the best villain Don Johnson can be, and that is a formula this guy has really honed in on. So take that as a huge endorsement of what he is bringing in this role. It's so good. It is suspenseful. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's got a good thing to say. This is cinema, folks. This is the mid-budget cinema we have been demanding, and here it is, a perfect example of it in our laps. We can watch it and support it and encourage companies to pay for more things like this. So Rebel Ridge, Jeremy Saulnier's new movie, Rebel Ridge, go check it out. And that is our show. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FeelingSeenPod, or send us an email at feelingseen@MaximumFun.org. If you want to follow me, I am Jorkru on Twitter, JORCRU. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
supported directly by you.